Yeah, very, very early on, me and my co-founder came to the conclusion that we are good at genetics, and that's probably what we should stick to. And if you try to overreach, like of course it can be successful. There are companies that make that work, but I think in ag the supply chains are pretty complex.
So, welcome to this week's episode on Leaders on a Mission. And just starting with this fact, just researching this episode, but over 40% of global crop yields could be lost by 2050 due to climate change. Yet it takes a decade to bring a new single crop variety to the market. So that's quite astounding, and that's a real disconnect that Phytoform Labs is aiming to solve today. And I'm so glad I've been chatting with Will Pelton, CEO and co-founder of Phytoform, for over a year now about coming on. So great to have you on, Will. And Phytoform are a company using AI and gene editing to rapidly develop climate-resilient crops. And like this episode, we're going to really dive in, explore the future of sustainable agriculture, the challenges of scaling plant science, and just really get to understand how Phytoform plan to transform the way we feed the world. So we got a lot to get through. Will, we better crack on. Thanks for coming on
Well,
today.
thank you so much for having me, Simon. Really glad to finally be on the podcast.
That's great. And just fascinating journey. This is your first kind of CEO, first founder, first job, I think, right? So give me the context to, your journey leading up to founding Phytoform Labs. I'm thinking about the key moments that really kind of led for you starting this company.
Yeah, so I definitely didn't come from a kind of serial entrepreneur angle. I never, that wasn't my drive, was to become, a founder and start companies. That's not really what the direction I came from. I came from a technical background originally, so I have been fascinated by plants my entire life. Really not sure why. I mean, some of my relatives were farmers, so maybe there's some input there, but always been very, very fascinated by plants, and also how we can make our industries more like sustainable. Actually, not just industries, our lives more sustainable in general. I At school, I realized there was potentially a career in plant science, which I think is not something that's well advertised in the UK, maybe elsewhere as well. But most people just think of doctors, medical doctors and lawyers and engineers. But there are other careers in STEM as well. And sort of began to focus more on genetics in crops, which I guess every scientist says this era is the best to be alive in. But I think for crop scientists, it probably is. Like, we are finding so much more information from genetics than we've ever found before. So really amazing time. And then I was very lucky to get a doctorate at Imperial College London, which is obviously a university in London that focuses mostly on kind of science courses. And Imperial College, just has a great startup ecosystem. So there's like James Field from Lab Genius, Paul Rutten from Concert Bio, a whole bunch of companies both in other spaces and also in ag. So it's a great place to be if you're starting a company. And basically me and my co-founder, we had to do something called a PIPS, which is like a professional internship placement or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but it was basically an opportunity to get out of the lab for 3 months and go and do something else. And generally people go into kind of like policy, or maybe they'll work for an established corporate. But me and my co-founder decided, well, we've got some ideas about technologies that we think could be pretty transformative to the agricultural industry. Can we go and like test those ideas in the real world, and then maybe develop a company off the back of that? And we had 3 months with the help of Imperial to kind of test these ideas on various kind of courses that they ran. And we got some serious traction in the industry, and really that was kind of the birth of Phytoform.
Amazing. And that was nearly 8 years ago, right? So think about what's changed in the world since then, right? I mean, honestly, you founded the company in August 17. Look where we are now. Look what we've been through.
Yeah, just huge. I mean, more than I would have ever imagined has changed in that time.
Yeah, incredible, isn't it? And but so tell us a little bit about tell us a little bit about Phytoform Labs in terms of, I suppose, the problems that you're looking to solve, as it were.
Sure. Yeah, so I guess like at a more general level, we are a crop genetics platform. So our kind of belief as a company is that to innovate in agriculture, we think genetics is going to be a key part of that, and we think that because a lot of problems in agriculture are biological problems, right? So like climate change. Basically, we need to make plants that are more resilient. Disease, that's again biology versus biology. Trying to control other things like weeds and pests. There are biological problems, and we think biology is the most elegant way to solve that. And so Phytoform developed our platform to do that. But within kind of crop genetics, when we were spending our 3 months doing our internship at Imperial, we realized that within the industry, companies put a lot of money into discovery work, right? So they're trying to understand the fundamentals to biology, and there's a lot of effort in that. But actually, we saw a massive gap in the translation of that discovery work. So if you look at like where a lot of money and time is funneled into, it's actually not in the discovery piece. It's actually in the translation piece. So trying to get, I guess, value from that discovery work. And we decided, okay, this is like a really underserved area within the industry. This is where we need to position ourselves. And we believe, obviously, that we had the tools to solve that problem. So yeah, that's kind of where we see ourselves. We're like this translation engine for the industry, for crop genetics.
And tell me a little bit more about the translation engine and what that gap it actually is.
Yeah, sure. So I'm gonna go back to a bit of basics in the old biology front, just to kind of help inform everyone. But yeah, so a lot of the discovery work is focused on, I guess, like labeling bits of genome, right? So you say, aha, like we've managed to find this gene, and through lots of lab work, we've realized that it makes your crops more drought resilient or more cold resilient, whatever. But the problem is, just because you found that gene doesn't necessarily mean that gene is behaving in the right way. So maybe it doesn't switch on in most plants, and so you're just left with this gene that can confer drought resistance, but actually doesn't. And so that's where
not very practical.
Not very practical, and that's usually why it takes so long to get these crops into the field, because you're basically just like looking for like ways to do this over and over again using like random selection, effectively. So it's really unlikely to succeed. And so what we did is we realized that this ability to switch on and off genes is super crucial, right? Like in your body right now, every single cell has the same set of DNA instructions. And yet, clearly, there's something different. Otherwise, you'd just be, like a blob. But you've actually got different tissues and organs, right? You've got eyes and bones and skin. And the reason that you have those differentiated tissues is because some genes are switched on in your eyes that aren't switched on in your bones, etc. And it's the same process in plants. Being able to control that or even understand it is like enormously powerful and unlocks like a lot of potential value. So that's what we decided to focus on, and what makes us quite unique. And we realized, and again, this kind of we're a product of our time, right? We realized that there was a lot of data on this, but not a lot of understanding. And so we, like others in other industries, connected this to using machine learning, artificial intelligence to help us process these like relatively large data sets and extract meaning from them. And then we've coupled this to a genome editing technology so that we can take the output from our AI, the kind of redesigns of the natural DNA, and deliver those redesigns in a way that isn't considered like a genetically modified organism. It's basically what we deliver. You could get naturally. It's kind of nature identical, but it might take you 1,000 years. So we're really just
Mm.
cutting out that trial and error and randomness in the system.
Like a natural evolution.
Exactly. That's
type
exactly
thing.
how we like to think of it. Accelerated evolution.
Got it. So with the genome editing, is it like CRISPR? I mean, CRISPR technology. That's the thing that's the technology over the last 10 years, which is really driving this change in agriculture. Is it that kind of technology you're using?
Exactly. Yeah, we're using a type of CRISPR, what we call precision breeding. And yeah, of course, CRISPR has been transformative, not just in ag, in many industries. Won a Nobel Prize, which is pretty amazing. But I think for ag, it's been very difficult to precisely edit or breed crops. And this has unlocked like huge potential.
Is it? Yeah. Just thinking, like, when you think about this plant genome, and I know every plant is probably very different, but is it more complex than the human genome?
That's a good question. So obviously most people assume we're humans, we're like the pinnacle of evolution. We are more complex.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily true. So my favorite stat is that your Christmas tree, Norway spruce, if you have a Norway spruce, they used to be the largest genome on the planet. So they're about, I think, 5 to 10 times larger than the human genome. So your Christmas tree has a more complex genome than you. But now that record has been beaten by a plant called the Japanese canopy plant. I've never grown one myself, but that is 150 times the size of the human genome.
Amazing.
So something similar. So, like, these genomes are so much more complex than a human genome and more complex than most animals.
Got it. Yeah. What about things like vegetables and compared to the human, like a banana, tomato, that kind of thing?
Yeah, tomatoes are relatively simple. Well, relatively simple. But yeah, like potato is not far off the size of a human genome.
Amazing. And this CRISPR, I mean, amazingly, what it allows you to do is it allows you to, locate something very specific and almost like take something out, take a specific genome out, and then kind of, you're not inserting any kind of foreign DNA or anything like that. It's literally a cut, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So you can use that cut to like swap letters of DNA around, delete letters, maybe add a couple. It's editing is the best way to describe it. It's like really precise editing. It's like in a book, being able to, out of like the entire book, all the different words, being able to hone in on one word and like maybe change it or add a different ending onto it or something like that. So super incredible technology.
Got it. Okay. And was the platform always developed with this machine learning and AI in mind, or has that evolved, over the last 8 years, as it were?
It was definitely evolved. No, we realized. So we started off. Yeah, I'll give you the story of our kind of development. We started off with genome editing, and we realized, wow, this precision breeding technology is a massive opportunity, like many others. And so we went to the industry and said, guys, we can do precision breeding. What should we do? And they were like, well, can you help with drought resistance? And we were like, oh, right. We've got to have like another piece to this technology, not just the editing part, but like what to edit, right? And how to edit. And that's really where the AI piece came in, because we realized, we need kind of like the thinking engine behind this tool. And obviously humans, we're great at many things, but we're not that good at taking like huge data sets and finding patterns in them. And that's exactly what AI is fantastic at.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you just give me some idea of the scale when you think about that? Because I'm just trying to picture it. I'm no scientist myself, but in terms of like understanding, I don't know, the type of data set you're looking at there.
Oh, I've got to think about that. I mean, basically, we are taking data, so whole genome sequences of plants, which we've already covered, can be significantly larger than humans. And obviously, it's not just like each species has one genome, right? There's lots of diversity within a species. So, within potatoes, you go to the supermarket, there are already many, many varieties. And obviously outside the supermarket, there are even more. So we kind of have pooled all of that. And then we also have data telling us like how switched on some genes are. So it's like that piece about understanding which genes are switched on under what conditions. We also have that data set as well, and we're adding more as we kind of develop the AI. And you know, it's vast amounts of data. I wouldn't say, you know, it's not as much as like the text data you get for like ChatGPT, for instance, like all human written language. But you know, it's a large amount of data.
Got it. Yeah. And have you found like something like ChatGPT, is that added to like the modern interface now, the modern application, as it were? Has it affected what you're able to do and how quickly you can run things now?
Well, apart from our investors like using ChatGPT as kind of a comparator to Phytoform's AI, so you know, ChatGPT of plants is what Hampus has called us. That's not very, it's not that correct, but anyway. Apart from that, I think where it has helped, because we don't use the same sort of architecture, but of course, you know, with ChatGPT, there's been this boom in different types of AI model, and that's definitely helped us a lot. Because when it comes down to it, DNA is just text data, right? It's literally just 4 letters repeated in lots of different sequences. So it is just vast text data. But I think where it's really helped is it's also led to a boom in kind of the hardware as well. So, you know, there's been this huge surge in the number of GPUs being produced, you know, on the cloud and even on-prem. And that's been, you know, really helpful for us being able to access like those GPUs and that hardware.
Got it. Yeah, absolutely. So tell me then, I mean, I would have thought one of the biggest challenges would have been selecting which markets to go after, which product to focus on. I mean, clearly, the world is your oyster with this technology, right? I mean, tell us a little bit about, you know, the specific kind of markets or crops that you want to kind of focus on and why, as it were.
Yeah. So when we first approached the industry, it quickly became clear there were a few variables that would help us determine which crops to go after. One of the big ones, and it's something that you know, we always talk about in conversations, was the regulatory piece. So, you know, what we're doing, as I say, is effectively nature identical. You could get to what we produce through natural processes, but as I said, it might take you, you know, 100 generations or something. It might take you years and years and years. But you could get there. And so as a result, some countries have said, well, you know, if you can get to the same answer as a natural process, like why would we regulate you differently? Which, you know, obviously I think makes sense. I'm in favor of that. But not all jurisdictions, not all countries have decided to go the same way. So the US was kind of one of the early regulatory leaders in this area, and they came to that conclusion that, oh yeah, you could do this naturally, so why would we, you know, regulate in a different way? So it became very clear very quickly, like which markets in terms of which geographies were open, and the US is you know, a key market for us and kind of our main market at the moment. And then in terms of crops, that also helped determine which crops we go after, because it was simpler for us to enter markets which were kind of constrained to these geographies, right? So, you know, for instance, fresh tomato, you generally don't ship fresh tomatoes that far, right? I mean, within Europe, you do ship them between countries because it's quite a small geography, but the US is not shipping fresh tomatoes to the UK, right? They would get damaged, they would never make it. Processed tomatoes, sure, but not fresh. So it became very obvious to us that, okay, if we enter these fresh markets, there's less like regulatory constraint, you know, with borders, etc. We know we can keep it within a single market. And of course, these sorts of crops haven't necessarily had a lot of investment in terms of biotech. So we knew there was a lot of opportunity too. So yeah, we started in tomato and potato because we could keep them within like the US, and because there was a lot of opportunity in basically climate change and other things were really affecting these crops. So we knew we could help. And then as regulation has changed more globally, we're now looking at kind of larger volume crops as well. So row crops, for instance, corn has become a target for us recently. And as we continue to develop the company, of course, we'll continue to onboard new crops that kind of fit with our technology and fit with our solution.
Got it. Okay. And with the tomato specifically, then, what would your, what kind of traits are you looking, to kind of produce that are different from, the traditional kind of tomatoes at the moment? Then.
Yeah, so we've actually got two of our products that are now like in the field. I'll tell you why I've used quotation marks for in the field in a second. Which we're really proud of, right? There are very few companies in this space who've actually delivered products, to partners in the field. It's a tough old process, but we're very proud to be able to say that we have. And so one of our products is effectively a waste reduction trait. So we met this partner from the US, and he was basically saying like 20 to 30% of his crop either fell on the floor prematurely due to this funny kind of architectural change in the stem, or if it didn't fall on the floor, they would harvest it, and some of the stem would remain attached to the tomato, and then when it was transported, it would like mechanically puncture other tomatoes, and then there would be disease, and basically you would get a truck leaving the field that was fine, and then when it arrived, it would just be like mush. And basically the industry, when they look at the trucks, if they had too many of the stems, they would just throw them away. So sometimes just plow them back in, or feed them to animals, which I guess at least it's not wasted. But of course, that's a pretty low value waste stream compared to providing it to consumers. And so our technology was a great fit to solve that. There is actually like that kind of trait already exists in tomato genetics, but it's been very, very hard to transfer without bringing lots of other characteristics along with it. And so it's made that process of breeding very, very difficult. Whereas for precision breeding, it's super easy. We like edit just that individual trait. The rest of the tomatoes.
It's one trait.
One trait.
Is that what it is?
One trait, and it can reduce waste by that much. We can edit
by 20-30%. Yeah. You literally.
And it's such a good place to start, right? Because when you're thinking about sustainability and resiliency, well, just stop wasting significant amounts of the crop, and immediately, your yield per kilo of nitrogens just increase massively. So you're using less resources per kilo of output, and so it's such an obvious place for us to start.
Yeah, no, got it. And then. Does that mean you can get that to market? How quickly can this get to market then? This particular variety get to market?
Yeah.
And be sold?
So now with our tomato precision breeding pipeline, it takes us around 9 to 18 months to develop a product, which is lightning fast compared to much of the conventional industry. Then we hand it over to our partners. So we have a similar business model to like ARM. The chip designer. We basically design discrete packets of IP, which we then license to partners in the crop genetics industry, so seed companies and food companies as well. And then they take that to market because they're providing basically the chip, right? They've got all the other bits that you need, and we're providing these bits of design that improve the efficiency of that kind of chip or seed significantly. And so they will have to trial it, which can take a couple of seasons, and then it can go into the market. So we're hoping those first two tomato products will enter the market in the next year, 2026.
Great, that's fabulous. Yeah. And the model, it looks a really. So in terms of your business model, that seems. I don't know. Over the years, you've seen companies try to do everything. Let's bring it to market. We've got this technology. Let's commercialize it ourselves. You seem to have a very focused approach, right? You don't need to build your company with channels and, it is, you hand it over, it's all about the partners you work with, as it were.
Yeah. Very, very early on, me and my co-founder came to the conclusion that we are good at genetics, and that's probably what we should stick to. And if you try to overreach, like, of course it can be successful. There are companies that make that work. But I think in ag, the supply chains are pretty complex. And if we wanted to, for instance, in corn, if we wanted to like develop the traits, develop the seed, grow it, process it, we're basically just competing against all these different links in the supply chain, the value chain, who are so much more efficient at each of those pieces. And the question is, does like our genetics technology make us better at every step in that supply chain? And the answer is not always, right? If we've improved seeds, we don't make them more like truckable, right? We're still not going to be better at supply chain logistics than other companies. So yeah, we came to the conclusion, look, there are people who can do this much better than we can. Let's focus on delivering what we can do better than anyone else, and then work with others in the supply chain, work with them rather than against them to get this to market.
It makes perfect sense. And look, congratulations with that as well, because you mentioned it. Is this your first kind of partnership or first kind of announcement with things?
So yeah, we haven't actually. Those were our first products, and so we have a few others that are coming through the pipeline soon as well, which we're very excited about. So yeah, one of the big announcements we'll have made, hopefully by the time this comes out, is that we partnered with one of the largest seed companies in the world called Corteva, and they produce so much seed that they are a significant contributor to our food chain. Right, they're a big part of it, and they want to leverage our technology to improve disease resistance in corn. And they're tackling some of the diseases that are, the biggest diseases in North America, certainly, and more globally. And of course, we're delighted to be involved with that, right? Like, corn is huge crop, one of the biggest, one of the top three. And if we can help improve the stability of the supply chain and the sustainability of the supply chain, we're very excited to contribute.
Oh, fabulous. Big congratulations with that. And I would have thought, just knowing how long these partnerships take, you've probably been chatting with them for a long time, right? Probably not something that happens overnight.
No, this is B2B with large corporates. It takes a while. We brought on one of our newest team members, Frank Hardeman, who's our head of business development, because he's a seed industry veteran. And I think, we kind of need that experience brought in to help us navigate these conversations. But we are reducing those times, those sort of sales cycles as we develop as a company. I think, every year we have more proof points, which kind of provides the industry with more confidence. And also then we have more examples every year as well of kind of like these types of partnerships. So it's getting better, but yeah, it's not done in a day.
No, absolutely. And what about the impact in agriculture post the Trump administration, etc., in terms of the regulatory kind of pathway? Any changes to note? I think from your viewpoint, as you look for the next 4 or 5 years, as it were.
Oh yeah, there's a lot going on in that area globally. So I think the more exciting piece of news that's particularly relevant to you and me is that the UK government has now signed into law new legislation that will allow us to commercialize genome edited or precision bred products in the UK. So, for us, that's a great opportunity, and I'm very excited to be able to, help our industry, our home industry, and not just with work with others. And we definitely want to bring some of our products to the UK market. Aside from that, Europe is also looking at changing the regulation. I wouldn't even hazard to guess how long that will take. There's been a lot of progress recently, but as I'm sure you're aware, these things take time with the European bureaucracy. So, but they look really positive. They're moving in a very positive direction, and it will be similar to like the US, basically, they're saying, GMOs will still be regulated. Where you've added in DNA from another species, that will be regulated. But if you're just basically editing what already exists in a way that could be achieved naturally, we will deregulate that product. So, yeah, I think it's an exciting area to be in terms of the regulatory piece, which is not often something you say. And there'll be a lot of change over the next few years.
Yeah, and it's great to see. I think it is slow progress, but it is great to see. It will certainly replace GMOs, won't it? That's for sure. So yeah, I mean that is good news. I suppose, like, looking ahead, what about any kind of blockbuster products of some kind? Where can you see? Is there anywhere particularly you can see a real kind of like something that gets you really excited about product wise, or something particularly, as it were, in the market?
Sure. I mean, I'm going to bring up one of our own examples. But yeah, we've developed this tiny tomato product, which we're very excited about bringing to market. And so, yeah, when we were early on in our kind of tomato product of pipeline development, we were looking for like other use cases, and we were speaking to the indoor growing industry. So this is like greenhouses. Also used to be vertical farms. There are less of them at the moment, so unfortunately. So so mainly like greenhouse growing, which is huge, right? A lot of our fresh produce now is produced under greenhouses, and it makes sense, right? It's more controllable. So the weather's getting crazier and crazier. Not just in other countries, like even in the UK. I mean, this spring has been insane, right? It's been so hot, which is usually you would consider great, but if you're a farmer, it's been really tough. And so, yeah, putting it under glass just means everything's more controllable, a little bit more stable. And I don't know if have you ever been to a tomato greenhouse? Yeah. Okay. You usually see they have these massive vines, right? That they train, and they're like 10-foot high or 14-foot high or something like that. So really, really tall. And they actually don't want that. And we were really surprised by this, but that actually makes the process of growing them, looking after them, and harvesting them really difficult. And you've got to have a lot of labor involved, right? You've got to constantly be pruning them and making sure they're tied up correctly so they don't flop over. Then obviously to harvest it, you've got to get like one of those cherry picker trolleys, so you can get jacked up to the right height. And it's very expensive, and labor is a real problem, right? And not just from a cost perspective, but even from just being able to access it. Right? And I don't think that's just the UK, right? It's the same in Europe and the US. And so we thought, okay, well, what if we optimize the tomato to the system rather than the other way around? And so we developed this super small tomato product. It's about 1 foot high, 1.5 foot, like 30 centimeters high tomato. So really, really short. And it produces like 3 or 4 trusses of tomatoes. That's it. But it only has like a 10 centimeter squared footprint. So you can pack like 10 of them in a square meter. 100 of them in a square meter. Really pack them in. So what they lack in kind of yield per plant, they make up for in yield per square meter. Right. And plus, they take 4 months to grow to maturity. So they're much, much faster. These vines take 12 to 14 months. They're alive for like a whole year or longer. And so we can get 3 generations in the same time. So hopefully you're starting to see although per plant you get a lot less, per square meter we're getting potentially 100 if we optimize the system of these plants 3 times a year. So actually we can outperform conventional greenhouse yields. And so we're really excited to see that go into the market. It's already in trials. That's why I said field trials with quotation marks, because they're not really in the field. They're in a greenhouse.
Greenhouses, yeah. And how I mean, it sounds fabulous. You can really see the opportunity there. So when you are in trials, what's the process to get that through? How long does that take?
Yeah. It kind of depends on the crop. So Simon, if you're ever in the Harpenden area in Hertfordshire, that's where our HQ is, you are more than welcome to come trial some yourself. Come taste some of our genome edited tomatoes. They're great. It's been a good spring, so they're really tasty this year. We hand basically seeds over to our partners, so growers in this context, and they will put them into their systems, and they will basically apply the sort of normal agronomic treatments, so fertilizers, look for different diseases, etc.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the ultimate validation is what the yield looks like. Because if we don't at least reach the sort of a similar yield or beat conventional yields, then of course they're just not interested, right? It just doesn't make fiscal sense. And so that's what they're really looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it sounds fabulous. It sounds like the world of breeding is changing so much, right? It really is. And probably a very exciting time the next 10, 15 years in terms of what kind of produce we're going to kind of find out there, as it were. Things that are really thoughtfully designed, for us, I think it is.
I think you're right. I think what's great about this technology is there is also the opportunity to not just improve the food system, but also make it more consumer facing, right? So increase the diversity within the crops we eat. So we're kind of eating other varieties of crop as well as other species, and then also increase the nutritional value of crops as well. So yield has been king for the last sort of 60 years. Now we realize, like, okay, you can only eat so much starch, right? You've got to have some nutritional value aside from just starch. And I think that's something this technology can help with. So
yeah, absolutely. And just tell us a little bit about, say, you mentioned about the partnership, and where does the company go from here? What's the plan for you? Like, do you look at this as a possible exit down the road, or how are you viewing the kind of future of the company?
That's a good question. I think agriculture, ag tech as an industry has been struggling a bit recently. We've seen a huge reduction in funding for early and later stage companies in this space, which definitely makes it more challenging. But in some ways, it also, I guess it kind of really emphasizes actual value within a company. So there's less hype now, right? You can't hype up your company and get those huge valuations. That's not how it works now. Now, individuals are looking for really good signs of traction, solid technologies that actually work. So I think actually it can play in your favor, depending obviously what you built. But in terms of kind of exit, I think there are larger corporates in this space that traditionally have acquired companies at various stages. So I think that's a big push for us. And I think in terms of what the future looks like, I brought up earlier on that we are like a translation engine, right? So I think success for us is when we can get tens to hundreds of new traits to the field, rather than what we do now, which is like maybe 1 or 2 a year globally, if you're lucky. Which is it's just not having the impact it should be. This kind of precision breeding technology. So for us, that's what success looks like when we're helping to push out potentially hundreds of these traits, really helping to optimize each crop within each value chain, and hopefully overall reducing the impact of agriculture.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I mean, look, you made a great start with this, and you're on a great track. And I could chat to you all day about this, but I know you need to get back to running the company, right? So really appreciate you coming on. It's been a fascinating journey, diving into the world of the genome, and just your journey over the last 8 years in bringing this translational engine to market, and looking at some of the markets and some of the partnerships you've spoken about as well. So I wish you all the best for the future. Really appreciate you coming on today for the chat.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for having me, Simon. It's been good to chat through this, and that offer to taste our tomato still stands. You're more than welcome to come visit us.
Absolutely. No, I will do. And thank you for all our listeners tuning in to the episode. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next show.